Shakespeare show. King Leontes, really falls into a fit of paranoia about his beloved wife Hermione and her possible pregnancy under the, her possible suspicious pregnancy, shall we say? Alleged false pregnancy. And the delightful tale of this little love triangle slowly expands, leading us to this particular segment of the story.
Yeah, so Hermione is all like, I'm sort of sick to play with Maximilius right now, sort of hands him off to some ladies. And Maximilius is, really pretentious and just generally obnoxious and tries to talk up one of the ladies while talking down one of the other ladies. There's a little scene, and then Hermione's like, oh my gosh, you should tell us a story. And she comes back out of nowhere. But she's like, tell us a story. He's like, do you want a happy story or a sad story? She's like, I want a happy story. And Maximilius, being the pretentious little child that he is, says, a sad tale's best for winter. And I think that line is very significant, obviously, for what we are talking about with this play, because a sad tale is best for winter. Of course, we have, since we've all read it, we know the dichotomy of the winter versus the spring, and the tragedy versus the romance. And so, of course, the winter is associated with the tragedy, and the spring is associated with the romance. So
yes, it certainly is.
Yes, it certainly is. So he has that nice little embedding right there, and a little bit of foreshadowing, too, with Maximilius. So then, of course, Maximilius never actually gets to tell the story, and it just sort of switches suddenly to Leonates, and he's, as we could tell from Act 1, not exactly the happiest person right now.
All that's true is mistrusted!
Yeah, he has some trust issues. He asked for Maximilius because he doesn't want Maximilius with Hermione because he thinks that spending time with Hermione will actually disturb the boy's character. Although I would make the argument that Maximilius his character is already pretty obnoxious and annoying in the first place. But he puns a little bit on some foreshadowing involving
Bear, the boy hints.
Yes, so he continually puns on the word bear, foreshadowing, of course.
The center is not enough to bear the schoolboy's top. Away with her to prison.
Yeah, so we see lots of punning with that. We basically, Leontes is very convinced that Hermione is cheating on him. Everyone's trying to convince him otherwise. It's not working, and he sends his really pregnant wife to prison. Okay? And Hermione is, of course, very noble, and she says, I'm not going to cry. Do not cry for me, because I'm not guilty. And if you cried, then it would be admitting that I'm guilty. But she says, there's some ill planet reigns. I must be patient till the heavens look with an aspect more favorable. And that brings back something that we've looked at with a lot of Shakespeare's other plays, with the idea of fate versus free will, and the idea of the heavenly bodies having something to do with that fate. So obviously she's being treated very unjustly by her husband, the king, and she attributes this ill will to fate rather than to his free will. And then she goes on, don't weep for me. Okay, so then Antigonus decides that he wants to try to take up the queen's cause with the king, and he starts making all kinds of really crazy boasts, including but not limited to
For every inch of woman in the world, every dram of woman's flesh is false if she be.
And Leontes is just like, shut up. Like, literally, that's his next line. And so the Antigonus continues.
Would I knew the villain, I would land damn him.
And there's actually a footnote that says that we don't know what that means. And then Antigonus, for some reason, continues on saying that if Hermione is actually false, he's going to sterilize his daughters, which is a little bit harsh, I think, and a little bit unmerited since they have nothing to do with this. Yeah, so that was a little bit of interest there. And basically, the entire rest of the scene is just Leontes saying, you know, Hermione's cheating on me, she's a horrible person. Antigonus saying, no, she's not cheating on you, I'm going to sterilize my daughters because she's really true to you. And just all kinds of nonsensical back and forth, no one's changing anyone's mind. But Leontes towards the end is like, well, just to be absolutely sure, like I'm really sure about what I'm doing, but just to be like absolutely sure, we're gonna ask the Oracle at Delphi, which is really weird because, I mean, we don't really have a time setting here, but that's like ancient Rome, like Greece, like we're talking like ancient Greco-Roman cultures, and so seeking the Oracle at Delphi is a little bit, it seems anachronistic even though we don't technically have a specific time period. But it also calls back that idea of fate, which was very, like the Greco-Roman cultures were really influenced by the idea of fate, and so that oracle is almost like fate again. So we saw the idea of the heavenly bodies with fate, which is sort of more medieval kind of idea, and then we have the oracle, who's definitely the ancient idea of fate. So based on that, and so Leontes is like, well, I'm off to go publicly declaim my wife now, since I've already sent her very pregnant to prison. And Antigonus, so Leontes ends it with, for this business will raise us all, and Antigonus says, to laughter as I take it, if the good truth were known. So again, that juxtaposition of, you know, I'm sending my innocent, very pregnant wife to go rot in a jail cell with, oh, but we'll all laugh about this because really she's innocent and we all know that, you know, so it's, again, that tragedy versus romance right there in that last line.
Meanwhile, in the jail cell, Hermione's lady-in-waiting assistant goes to the jail cell, insisting that she be able to speak with Hermione. And the conversation goes a little something along these lines. I need to speak to Hermione. Jailer says, no. I need to speak to her really bad. No. I really, really want to speak to her. You can't. But how about this? I'll let you talk to Amelia. And at this point, Paulina tries desperately to get Amelia to give her some sort of update on the baby and what's going on, because it's a terrifying thing for a lady-in-waiting to be watching her lady pregnant in prison, which is terrifying. Was that? Really pregnant. And so Amelia and Paulina come together with this idea that they should, the child's been born, it's a beautiful little girl, and they're going to take the baby in front of the king and be like, look how terrible you are, you rotten person, look what you've done, this baby was born in prison because you're paranoid. And Paulina, in this fit of self-justification, self-righteousness, says, I'll dare be sworn, these dangerous, unsafe loons, the king beshrew them, he must be told on it, and he shall, talking about the baby. The office must become a woman, the office becomes a woman best, I'll take it upon me, she's talking about her ability to go and talk to the king. I'll take it upon me, if I prove honey-mouthed, let my tongue blister. So she's going to go and make this thing happen. She's going to make this king feel terrible, which I feel is a great thing that women should do, and make people feel bad. Good at that. Thank you. And so Paulina then, like, she gets the little baby, and she tells Amelia to bring a message to Hermione. She says, tell her, Amelia, that I'll use that tongue I have, if wit flow from front as boldness from my bosom, let not it be doubted, I shall do good. And then the jailer gets really worried at this point, because like they've got this whole crazy conspiracy that's totally going to throw him under the bus. They're going to like sneak a baby out of prison, and he's sitting there the whole time watching this scheme get hatched, and he kind of interjects and says, you know, you guys are going to get my head cut off or something. You should probably stop that. And she says, no need to fear, no need to fear. The child was a prisoner to the womb, and it is by law and process of great nature thence, freed and enfranchised. So with a bunch of big words, the jailer just says, okay, and it lets it happen. But the jailer should not have let that happen, because he's going to get fired. And so they bring the baby to the king.
And at at this point, the king, Leontes, learns that Mamilius is pretty horribly sick. And of course, this is because of his shame over his mother's infidelity. But Paulina brings the child in, and she's reasoning with the king, hoping that seeing his child will maybe make him at least a little bit rational, which of course it doesn't. But he becomes furious, and he becomes even more resolute in his belief that his wife is an adulteress. Paulina is showing him like how there's similarities between Leontes and the child, but he refuses to see it. His reaction is it's evidence of this deep fear of female power. He actually calls Paulina a witch and says that he'll burn her, which is fantastic.
She's a witch. She floats.
Yeah, you're saying like Python video.
But Leontes sees himself as this enforcer of patriarchal discipline, and to have this position challenged by his wife is devastating to him. He's just completely unable to function and to be rational. But this whole situation is actually historically parallels Henry VIII's second wife, and he was accused of adultery and was executed because of it. But I just thought that was interesting.
Okay, well, after being a misogynistic butthole, he decides that being that way isn't bad enough. He should throw an infanticide? Is that it? Infanticide into it. So Paulina runs away because she's sick of dealing with him, and she just lays the baby at his feet and says, okay, you deal with it. Just come to it on your own terms. So she leaves.
Which I feel like this is sort of a betrayal of their promise to Amelia and Harmony, but you know, we're not going to debate right now.
I'm just gonna leave this baby on the ground here.
Pretty much,
Considering she
yeah.
like promised to deal with it, she's literally leaving it with the king. Terrifying.
So
Tell me more.
Leontes decides like to turn all of his anger towards Antigonus, who just happens to be there at the wrong place at the wrong time.
Thou traitor hast set on thy wife to this, my child.
Away with it! Even thou that hast a heart so tender o'er it, take it hence, and see it instantly consumed with fire.
He says, referring to his newborn baby daughter.
And everyone present in the room is obviously pretty mortified. Like, Antigonus continually says, like, I'm not going to set your baby in fire. And Antigonus, like, or Leontes, like, pretty much says that he's going to bash the poor little baby's brains out with his hands. And Antigonus is like, I'll do anything to save this baby's life. So Leontes is like, okay, just go. You don't have to kill it, but I don't want it to live. So go bring it out to the woods and just leave it there. And Antigonus.
Some powerful spirit instruct the kites and ravens to be thy nurses. Wolves and bears, they say, casting the savages aside, have done like offices of pity. Sir, be prosperous, and more than this deed does require against this cruelty. Fight on thy side, poor thing, condemned to loss.
I feel like this is almost like a bit of foreshadowing to his death, but in a way it could also be like, I think it might be an actual like sort of plot device where he actually, because he's basically blessing the newborn to live in the woods or whatever. He's basically letting it live, and that's why the baby lives.
Though it may get eaten by a bear.
Because it's a pun on bears, guys. Come on. That's fun. You guys Thank you. The only one that matters enjoyed it. Oh yeah, is that?
That's it.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So that's two.